Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. This will be my last show on the road, I think, unless some kind of major news breaks before I leave. Then I'll be back in the studio for a little bit before I head to Park City to cover the Sundance Film Festival. And we're back on our regular schedule today, so we're going to be looking at the second box office weekend of the year, which saw continued dominance by Avatar, Fire, and Ash. And we're going to look at the race for number one in 2025. That's right, even though it's 2026, we still don't know what the number one movie released in 2025 will be. There are three major contenders, and we're going to look at how they break down. But let's look first at the box office for this past weekend. This was January 9th through the 11th, and the number one film was Avatar, Fire, and Ash. It dropped 48.1% to bring in another $21.5 million. It's now approaching $350 million domestic. Primate opens in second place at $11.1 million. It's not often there's a movie that opens in wide release that I know nothing about, but I haven't really been that connected with what's been going on, so I don't know anything about Primate, except for the fact that it's the number two movie in the country. The Housemaid continues to hold exceptionally well. It dropped 27.8% in its fourth week to bring in another $10.9 million. It's approaching $100 million domestic. Zootopia 2 hanging around. It dropped 48.4% to bring in another $10 million. Greenland 2, Migration, opens in fifth place at $8.4 million. It's kind of a pandemic-era action film getting a theatrical sequel. In sixth place was Marty Supreme, which dropped 39.3% to bring in $7.6 million. It's now at $70 million domestic. Anaconda dropped 50% to bring in another $5 million. The SpongeBob movie, Search for SquarePants, brought in $3.8 million. Song Sung Blue brought in another $3 million. And David rounds out the top 10 with $2.9 million, breaking $75 million domestically. Dropping out of the top 10, we had Wicked for Good, which is out after 7 weeks, and Five Nights at Freddy's 2 out after 5 weeks. And when we look at the biggest theater count changes for this past weekend, Bradley Cooper's newest film, the stand-up comedy movie Is This Thing On?, starring Will Arnett and Laura Dern, added 1,442 theaters, so that was the biggest theater change of this past weekend. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is almost out of wide release. It dropped to 954 theaters. It's still in just over 1,000. Wicked for Good dropped 743 theaters. It's now in 1,142. The SpongeBob movie dropped 650 theaters. And The Plague, which is a movie I really enjoyed. It was in my honorable mentions on my top 10 of the year. Did that thing that you often see with smaller films. It had 1 week in wider release and is now out of most theaters. It lost 450 theaters. It's only in 140. So let's take a look at some of the movies that are in the domestic top 10, and we will start with the number one movie in the country, Avatar, Fire, and Ash. When we look at James Cameron's adjusted domestic grosses, so these are adjusted for inflation, Avatar, Fire, and Ash is now in the top 5. It moves ahead of True Lies, Aliens, The Abyss, and The Terminator, but that's where it's going to stay because it's not going to get to $487.4 million, which would put it past Terminator 2 Judgment Day. It does have those James Cameron legs at the box office, though. It's what we talked about when it opened, the fact that he will have a movie that opens and then does many, many more times that opening weekend. And Zootopia 2 has had a great surge at the box office over the Christmas holidays, and that has put into question exactly what the number one movie of 2025 will be. A Minecraft movie has been at the top for a very long time. Lilo and Stitch almost caught up to it. And now Avatar, Fire, and Ash and Zootopia 2 are both making a play to come in and steal the 2025 title in early 2026. So let's take a look at these three movies and how they're doing day by day in comparison to a Minecraft movie. Now, Zootopia 2 has been out much longer than Avatar. That's why its line is much longer. Avatar has only been out for just over 3 weeks. But look at what each of these movies are doing when you compare to where a Minecraft movie was at a similar point in its release. Now, a Minecraft movie got off to a much hotter start than either of these two films, and that's because it was a different time of year. It had that huge opening weekend, and it opened in the middle of the week, so you saw that big surge through days 2, 3, 4, and 5. But you see what the holiday season can do for a movie here, because first of all, look at Avatar, Fire, and Ash. It shot up ahead of Zootopia 2 based on where it was at this point in release when it hit those Christmas holidays. And while the gap was a lot wider with a Minecraft movie when it had been out for about 10 days, it is now narrowing that gap. Although I don't know if it's going to catch up. That's what we're going to find out in the next probably 2 weeks or so. But look at what Zootopia 2 has been doing. The gap was very large, 21, 28 days into Zootopia 2's release. But the fact that it did so well at Christmas and is still continuing to do well in the post-Christmas window means that the gap is slowly narrowing between these two films, where a Minecraft movie had pretty much flattened out at this point. Zootopia 2 is still doing really well, and you can see those two dots on the end of this chart getting closer and closer together. So the question is this last part of Zootopia 2's box office going to be enough for it to eclipse a Minecraft movie? Will Avatar, Fire and Ash continue to close the gap as it has those legs at the box office, as those last people go to get that experience in the theater? This is going to be a very interesting race to watch, and I think it's going to be very close as to what could be the number one movie. It could very well be a Minecraft movie. We just don't know at this point, but the holiday box office, as it so often does, is making the race for the number one movie of the year very interesting, and it's something that I will continue to track here on the channel until we have a definitive winner, which is probably going to be sometime in late January or early February. And this breakdown leads us to our Charts with Dan trivia question. So we have a James Cameron movie and a Disney animation movie vying to upset a Minecraft movie as the number one movie of the year. Since the release of The Terminator in 1984, which was really the beginning of James Cameron's career, who has had more movies that were the top grossing domestic film of the year? Is it James Cameron or is it Disney Animation Studios? Now keep in mind this does not include Pixar, and The Lion King 2019 is also not included here because it's not under the Disney Animation banner, although it wouldn't be eligible anyway because it wasn't the number one movie in the year it was released. I'll give you a second to think about it, and the answer is actually James Cameron. Since 1984, James Cameron has had 3 films that were the highest grossing movie of the year domestically: Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Titanic, and Avatar. And Disney Animation, despite the Disney Renaissance, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, all that, has only had 1 film since 1984 that was the top grossing domestic film of the year, and that was Aladdin. Part of it is that giant movies like The Lion King were up against other giant movies like Forrest Gump back in 1994, but James Cameron has easily been besting Disney Animation as far as the highest grossing film of the year, and we'll see if that's the case once again in calendar year 2025. Looking at the highest grossing A24 releases, Marty Supreme is racing to number 1 itself. It's now only about $7 million behind Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I think it is going to easily become the highest grossing A24 domestic release. Now the question here is, since it's such an award season favorite, will it have enough momentum on the back end of the box office? Timothée Chalamet just won the Golden Globe. We're getting into the major guild nominations. Oscar nominations are coming soon. Could it be A24's first $100 million domestic grosser? It's got about $30 million left in a lot of award seasons, so we will see, but it looks like it should very easily be the highest grossing A24 domestic release of all time. And let's look at the box office, the weekend box office for 2026 versus 2025. As I said on last week's show, this is going to kind of replace our Road to Recovery. We're going to compare it year to year. And for the second consecutive weekend, we did better than we did last year in 2025. The box office this past weekend was up 19.2% versus the second weekend of 2025. And if we can continue this trend, that'll be a good thing. Now, we just have 2 weeks right now of data to look at, but so far we are off to a better start this year than we were last year. Let's turn our attention now from the top movies domestically to the top movies internationally, all countries outside of the US and Canada. And Avatar, Fire and Ash continues to be the dominant movie internationally at $65.6 million. That's a 49.4% drop from last weekend. Zootopia 2 drops about 50% to bring in another $30.8 million. The Housemaid, just a 6.9% drop, so it's doing well both internationally and domestically, another $25.5 million. The Raja Saab comes in 4th place at $17.49 million. This is a film from India. Seems kind of like an Indian version of King Ralph. It's about an unlikely man who rises to power and rules unconventionally. And rounding out the top 5 is the SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants at $8.4 million. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get the top 5 films worldwide. And the number 1 movie, of course, is Avatar, Fire and Ash with another $86.9 million. for a $1.2 billion total. Zootopia 2 brings in another $40.9 million for a $1.65 billion total. The Housemaid brings in $36.7 million worldwide. Its worldwide gross is now approaching $150 million. The Raja Saab comes in at $19.8 million, and Primate rounds out the top five with $13.4 million. We've got so much more to break down at the box office this week, but before we do, I'm going to thank the sponsor for this episode, AG1. It's a new year, which for a lot of people means a new focus on ways to improve, but the truth is there isn't a right or wrong time to get healthier, there's just right now. And AG1 is one way that you can start prioritizing yourself and your health. Anyone who's tried to meaningfully change their habits can tell you that it's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent. I know I've struggled with that in the past. AG1 helps you simplify your nutrition in one scoop that contains a multivitamin, pre- and probiotic, superfoods, and antioxidants. One scoop in 8 ounces of water, and you're done in 20 seconds. And AG1's next-gen formula has added more vitamins and minerals than ever. I've used AG1 for quite a while, and they have helped me shake things up recently by introducing some new flavors. You not only have original, you also have tropical, citrus, and berry. And for me, when I'm doing something every day, variety really helps to keep me on track. AG1 now provides that variety, and they also gave me some travel packs that I can use when I'm on the road, like I am right now. AG1 has over 50,000 verified 5-star reviews and comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Go to drinkag1.com/Dan Murrell to get their best offer. For a limited time only, get a free AG1 duffel bag and free AG1 welcome kit with your first subscription order only while supplies last. That's drinkag1.com/Dan Murrell, drinkag1.com/Dan Murrell. Let's take a look now at what I call some of our specialty charts, and these were the top per theater averages for this past weekend. At number 1 was All That's Left of You, which brought in just over $28,000 per theater in 2 theaters. This is a movie that spans generations of Palestinian life in the West Bank, and it was Jordan's submission for the Academy Awards this year. In second place is Magellan, which brought in $15,000 per theater in 2 theaters. Gael Garcia Bernal plays the legendary explorer in this movie. The Testament of Ann Lee, which is an Oscar-hopeful film for Amanda Seyfried, comes in at $11,159 per theater in 4 theaters, a very slow rollout for this film. Dead Man's Wire, the latest from Gus Van Sant, starring Bill Skarsgård, brought in $11,000 per theater in 14 theaters, and playing in just 1 theater is the film Obex, which brought in $9,839. That is a movie that played at last year's Sundance Film Festival. It often takes time for these movies to find their way to theaters. These were the top films in limited release, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer. At number 1 is The Raja Saab at $2.3 million. In second place is Park Chan-wook's latest film, No Other Choice, which expanded to 147 theaters and brought in $1.37 million. In third place was the movie that took Best Drama at the Golden Globes, Hamnet, in 232 theaters. It brought in nearly $600,000. Then we have the latest from director Jim Jarmusch, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother in 253 theaters, bringing in $327,000. And then we have Golden Globe winner for Best International Film and Best Actor, The Secret Agent, with $175,000 in 116 theaters. This is what I call the 2025 fall holiday box office. Yes, we're still updating it because movies that were released in 2025 are still making money. Zootopia 2 is at number 1, but Avatar Fire and Ash moves up into the number 2 spot, just over Wicked for Good, which drops to number 3. The Conjuring Last Rites and Demon Slayer Infinity Castle round out the top 5. Then we have Five Nights at Freddy's 2 at number 6. The Housemaid moves up 2 spots to number 7. Predator Badlands is down 1 spot to number 8. Black Phone 2 is down 1 spot to number 9. And David now rounding out the top 10, knocking out Tron Ares. So a little animated film from Angel Studios knocking out the big behemoth from Disney and the latest in the Tron franchise. This is the 2025 annual domestic box office, so these are all movies released in 2025. Avatar Fire and Ash now moves up into the top 5, and it's coming for Superman. It should be in that number 4 spot pretty soon. You can see a Minecraft movie and Lilo and Stitch kind of clustered right up there at the top. Zootopia 2 closing in on both of them. Wicked for Good and Jurassic World Rebirth are both down 1 spot to numbers 6 and 7. That should be pretty much where they stay. And really that bottom 6 through 10 is pretty much locked with How to Train Your Dragon at number 10, The Fantastic Four at number 9, and Sinners at number 8. And it's not too early to look at 2026's annual domestic box office. So these are all movies released in 2026 with a gross of over $1 million. And Primate right now is the number one release of the year at $11.1 million, followed by Greenland 2 Migration, We Bury the Dead at number 3, The Raja Saab at number 4, and I Was a Stranger at number 5. But what we often do at the beginning of the year is look at the box office when you look at all movies in release, including those that were released in 2025, and you can see that since January 1st, Avatar, Fire, and Ash has been the number one movie of the year at $92.4 million, followed by Zootopia 2 at $40.8 million, but The Housemaid has made almost as much money in 2026 as Zootopia 2 at $37.6 million. Marty Supreme comes in fourth at $31.1 million, followed by Anaconda at number 5, The SpongeBob Movie at number 6, David at number 7, Song Sung Blue at number 8, and then two releases from this past weekend, Primate at number 9 and Greenland 2 Migration at number 10. Well, we are in a new year, and I have my first member poll question for members here on the channel of 2026, and it's a pretty broad question because there are a lot of movies on the release schedule this year. So my question is, what movie release are you most looking forward to in 2026? There are some massive movies that are on the release schedule this year. Which one are you the most excited about? Put your favorite in the comments of the member poll, which should be out right now. If your answer's already there, please upvote it instead of leaving it twice, because I imagine we'll have a lot of different answers to this question. I will reveal the results on next week's Charts with Dan, and if you're not a member here on the channel, depending on how you're watching, there could be a button that you can press that says become a member, or you can check the description below. Not only do you get to vote in this poll every week, you also get early access to some of my videos, as well as custom badges and emoji here on the channel. I would love to hear your voice along with everybody else's about what the most exciting movie of 2026 is, because I don't even know how I would answer that question. So that's everything I have for you at the box office. Let's take a look at the latest in the world of streaming. And this week we only have Nielsen numbers because I had 2 weeks of Netflix numbers on last week's show because I did it a little bit later. So these are the most watched streaming movies for December 8th through the 14th. Remember, Nielsen data is delayed by about a month. And the number one movie was the debut of Wake Up Dead Man at 21.7 million hours watched. That was significantly down from what we saw the first week of Glass Onion, which I think was around 37 million hours watched, somewhere around there. So we're seeing reflected in the Nielsen data, which is domestic, what we already saw in the Netflix data, which is global, which is a pretty significant downturn in performance from Glass Onion to Wake Up Dead Man. In second place was How the Grinch Stole Christmas at 10.35 million hours watched, followed by Home Alone, always a holiday favorite. Jay Kelly on Netflix, starring Adam Sandler and George Clooney, the latest from Noah Baumbach, comes in fourth place at 8.18 million hours watched. Then we have My Secret Santa at number 5, Oh What Fun at number 6, K-Pop Demon Hunters staying in the top 10 at number 7, Home Alone 2 at number 8, The Grinch at number 9, and The Santa Claus on Disney Plus at number 10. Remember, this is leading into Christmas, so no surprise seeing a bunch of holiday movies on this list. And when we look at the top U.S. streaming movie debuts of 2025, Wake Up Dead Man was at least able to end up at number 5 on this list, coming in behind the streaming debut of The Accountant 2, then the Netflix debut of Back in Action, the streaming debut of Moana 2, and easily the number one movie debut of 2025, Happy Gilmore 2 on Netflix back in the summer at 48.2 million hours watched. These were the most watched streaming shows for December 8th through the 14th. At number 1 was Stranger Things. This is during the gap between that first batch of episodes and the second batch of episodes. 50.3 million hours watched. Sean Combs' The Reckoning having a strong second week at 25.58 million hours watched. Then we have Landman on Paramount Plus, followed by NCIS and Homeland. Bob's Burgers is at number 6. Law & Order returns to the top 10 at number 7. Bluey is at number 8. On its finale week, Welcome to Derry makes the overall top 10 with 11 million hours watched, and Grey's Anatomy comes in at number 10, rounding out the top shows of the week. And these were the top 20 streaming shows by watch time per available episode. So you take the number of hours watched divided by the number of episodes you can watch. And Sean Combs' The Reckoning easily comes in at number 1 again with 6.65 million hours watched per episode. Landman coming in second place. Welcome to Derry comes in third place at 1.38 million hours watched per episode, which makes me think that it was always kind of lurking just below the top 10. It wasn't on the top 10 very often, but I think that viewership was pretty solid. We may get more more transparency when Nielsen releases their full list of year-end numbers. During the year, we just can see what makes the top 10. Stranger Things is at number 4, followed by The Abandons at number 5, The Beast in Me at number 6, Pluribus showing up on the chart with 857,000 hours watched per episode near the end of its first season. Percy Jackson and the Olympians is at number 8. This is the week that it debuted its new season. Ripple is at number 9, and Absentia rounds out the top 10. And as I mentioned, Sean Combs' The Reckoning doing very well as far as hours watched per episode in 2025. It now has the top 2 slots with its debut week and then its second week. Both weeks did better than Adolescence did, with 6 million hours watched per episode in its second week of release. Untamed now rounding out the top 5 here at numbers 4 and 5. And that's what I've got for you this week. Before we go, though, I wanted to flag a few things that you might be interested in, both at home and in theaters this upcoming week. First of all, today, on Tuesday, The Running Man makes its debut on Paramount+. So if you missed it in theaters and the box office numbers say most of you did, you can watch it at home starting today. On Thursday, also on Paramount+, we have the 2-episode debut of the newest Star Trek show, Star Trek Starfleet Academy. I'm not so sure about this one, but I might give it a shot. I don't know. Paramount Plus Trek has really not been for me. Then on Friday, the major new release is 28 years later, The Bone Temple. I will have a review of that movie here on the channel, probably on Friday. We'll see when I'm able to get to a theater to see it. All You Need Is Kill is also hitting some theaters around the country. This is an anime adaptation of the manga that inspired the film Edge of Tomorrow, aka Live, Die, Repeat. I've never actually read the manga, so this might be something I'd be interested in checking out if I had time. The 20th anniversary of Madagascar, the movie, not the country, is upon us, believe it or not, and there will be a 20th anniversary re-release in theaters this weekend. Expanding into more theaters is Gus Van Sant's Dead Man's Wire, which has been getting really good reviews, so if it's not playing near you, it may be this upcoming weekend. Also in many theaters around the country is a small movie called Signing Tony Raymond, about a football coach who goes to a small town to recruit a star player. Fathom Events is putting the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings trilogy in theaters this weekend as well, so there is plenty to choose from if you want to go to the movie theater. But if you want to stay at home, the latest big movie from Netflix debuts on Friday. It's called The Rip, and it's directed by Joe Carnahan. It's about a bunch of cops who find some dirty money and then have to fend off the people who come looking for it. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are the stars of this film, alongside Oscar hopeful Teyana Taylor, Kyle Chandler, Steven Yeun, and more. If you're more in the mood for a movie that you missed in theaters, Black Phone 2 will be debuting on Peacock this Friday, and Twinless, which was on my year-end top 10 list, will be available on Hulu starting on Friday. Then on Saturday, Kogonada's latest film, A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, starring Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie, hits Netflix. And on Sunday, we get the debut of the latest Game of Thrones spinoff show, which I believe is a prequel show, but not directly tied to the events of, the Lannisters, etc., called A Night of the Seven Kingdoms on HBO Max. So if you're thirsting for more Game of Thrones, and who is, you can catch A Night of the Seven Kingdoms on Sunday. And that's all I've got for you this week. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this episode. Be sure to stay tuned. As I mentioned, I will be back in the studio briefly before I head to Utah. And there are so many adventures ahead. I have a lot to plan for, not only the Oscars, but I'm also going to try to look at a preview of the Sundance Film Festival and so much more stuff. It's going to be an exciting couple of weeks after a not so great couple of weeks for me. And I appreciate your patience as I'm traveling all around the country. Until next time, stay safe. And I'll see you then. Bye.